this edition of the Odds On Favorites podcast, where we're talking sports entertainment, all with an eye on the bottom line. I'm Drew Goldfarb, joined by Rick Rockwell and Taylor Smith. New format this week for the podcast, trying something a little different. We're going to kick things off with the NFL. With the 2019 season right around the corner, there are still two major players that are holding out for new contracts. Running backs Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys and Melvin Gordon of the Los Angeles Chargers, both currently holding out. Cowboys, by the way, plus 2,200 odds to win the Super Bowl this year. Chargers plus 1,400. Rick, do you think either of these guys will end up missing regular season action?
You know, I do think a chance, at least for them. The Gordon saga, we'll call it saga, his drama going on down in SoCal, it sounds like he could hold out into the season. He's on his fifth year option for his final deal. He wants a new contract. He wants to be paid like the top running backs in the NFL, Gurley, Johnson and them, and Le'Veon Bell. Problem is this, he's been injury prone. He misses games every season for the first 4 years of his career. And the running back position as a whole has been devalued for years. Now it's like organizations look at the running back position and think, well, we can get someone in the middle round, second round, third round, free agent. We can have a running back by committee, and we don't have to spend all this money unless you find like an elite running back, like a Todd Gurley, someone of that nature. Then it's like, well, you got a franchise piece here, makes your offense even better. Does Gordon really make that offense, let's just say like Gurley made the Rams or Bell made the Steelers? I don't know if he does or doesn't. I'm still on the fence on that one. At times, he helps that offense a lot. But they have depth behind him. They have capable running backs behind him. He doesn't have leverage here. And I think because he doesn't have leverage and because he really believes that he deserves more, out of the two, I think he is the one that could end up missing time when the regular season starts.
I totally agree. Sorry. I think, Melvin Gordon, he's not as valuable to the Chargers as Zeke is to the Cowboys. Behind Ezekiel Elliott, the Cowboys basically have nothing. The Chargers have Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson behind them. We saw Gordon got hurt last year. Those guys stepped up and played really well. Melvin Gordon only had like 300 more rushing yards than Eckler did all season long. So, it's not like they don't have proven – not that they're stars or anything, but like Rick was saying, it's kind of a devalued position. You can get by if you have capable running backs. You don't need a star back there. It's kind of different for the Cowboys because Zeke is their offense. Dak Prescott's fine, but if Zeke's not around, that offense just isn't working. So, his backups are guys named Tony Pollard and Mike Weber. Raise your hand if you've heard of either of them. Exactly. So, I think if one of them does extend into the season, I think it's more likely to be Gordon. We saw a couple of years ago Joey Bosa. He had a long holdout into training camp, finally signed right before the season. Still wound up missing time, I think. But the Cowboys had a similar deal with Dez Bryant. He wound up getting paid. He didn't hold out into the season. I think Jerry Jones will pay up for Zeke, and I think Melvin Gordon's more likely to miss time.
I agree with you guys. And the thing is with this too, is I think it's worth mentioning is that when you're a running back in the NFL, because the position's been a bit devalued in the last 10 years when you compare it to when you had Tomlinson and Priest Holmes and kind of that era about 10, 15 years ago. But when you're looking at the running back position, because it's so devalued and because it is a position that takes such a physical toll, and you have typically a really short career when you're actually a starting running back and not just maybe a 1B or a backup. I think you run into a lot of these types of situations. We saw one last year in Pittsburgh with Le'Veon Bell. But it's, I understand where a guy like Gordon's coming from, where he could play. And as Rick said, he's got the injury issues. If he gets hurt, he may never get paid. This is kind of his opportunity. The only, the only thing that he can do to change his future earnings is to say, well, I'm not playing without a new contract. So if you want me, pay me now because I'm worth it now. And I may not be worth it if I play 16 weeks and get hurt, or if I play 10 weeks and end up getting hurt. But it could have, the Cowboys, I think, are going to end up signing him because, the track record is there too for them to not have this impact the regular season. The Chargers are plus 1,400 odds to win the Super Bowl this year. They're one of the more favored teams in the AFC. How much of an impact would this actually have? Because, Taylor, you brought up the stats, or I think it was you that brought up the stats of his backup running backs. What kind of an impact would this have, if any, if he misses week one and we're doing this every week?
I don't think he matters nearly as much as Zeke. It's just, it's their offense. It's the depth they have behind him. Their division, you got the Chiefs, which is obviously another Super Bowl contender, but the Raiders, certainly not. The Broncos, certainly not. So, even without Gordon, I think they should be fine. The AFC is not super deep. At this point, we don't think it's super deep. I'd be surprised if his absence really meant that much. He still averaged 5 yards a carry, but he's kind of more of a goal line type. He scored a bunch of touchdowns and stuff, but he's not the most explosive back in the world. Eckler and Jackson, I do think have more explosiveness behind them. That is definitely not a word.
It should
be. Yeah, maybe it is now. Let's get the dictionary on that. I don't think that would affect them very much at all. I think the Cowboys obviously would be affected quite a bit. Zeke has rushed for 1,400 or more yards in both seasons in which he's played at least 15 games. He's arguably the best player at his position in the game right now. Their offense is built around him. So if they are not with him, we saw a couple of years ago, they missed him for 6 games and they were terrible without him. So, that's why I think they're going to pay Zeke. Jerry Jones is Jerry Jones. I think Gordon's more likely to miss time. I didn't think actually until Le'Veon Bell actually did it, any player would actually sit out an entire season. Now that that's happened, he's kind of paved the way for that to actually happen. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see if Gordon winds up getting his trade request, and if so, who actually trades for him. I can't imagine a fifth-year running back on a potentially expiring deal has that much value on the trade market, but we'll see. I just don't think it affects the Chargers that much, so I don't think they're going to be rushing to the table to negotiate.
I like the pun. Rick, my question for you is, since we're in agreement – yeah, it was well done, unintentional or not. But Rick, my question for you, since we're all in agreement that the Cowboys are going to get this done, obviously that would impact a lot of teams in the NFC if Zeke missed a considerable amount of time because it changes the dynamic of the NFC East. If Gordon sits out and misses any significant time or can't get into his mode until 8 weeks into the season because he's missed some time, is there a team in particular that you think benefits the most from a situation like that? Is it just the Chiefs because they're the other team and suddenly they might be able to win 13 games in this, because of that division?
With the Chargers, they have I don't even know if you want to call it a stigma or a reputation of starting off slow and then picking up as the season goes on. They've done it for like the last decade. Every time they make a run to the playoffs, it's always in the second half of the season. So they start off 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, 1-5, something ridiculous like that. And then they win like 6, 7, 8 in a row. And before you know it, they're in the wild card hunt. It'll happen again this year with the Chargers. They have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. That defense is going to be ferocious. The offense will be explosive, although they lost Williams. He went to the Raiders. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see who steps up as their number 3 receiver. Maybe Benjamin will get more looks. A healthy Keenan Allen's going to be great. Tight end position, Hunter was hurt last year. If he's healthy and back and 100%, he's going to open up that offense more. Rivers loves to throw the ball. Eckler's a better catching back out of the backfield, in my opinion, than Gordon is. Gordon might have more top flight speed, but Eckler is the more shifty back. I think he's better in open space in terms of catching the ball, running routes, and I think that fits better with the Chargers offense. Jackson can grind it, between the tackles, up the middle and stuff. So when it comes to the Chargers, every single season, like the only teams that will affect are the other teams fighting for wild cards. So you're talking about teams like Buffalo. You're talking about teams.
What?
Yeah, they'll fight for a wild card. They made the playoffs 2 years ago as a wild card.
Entirely new topic
this year.
Next week.
They improved this offseason as much as any other team. Anyhow, Buffalo, the Ravens, all the teams that are sitting right there on the fence, and you can go through each division. If the Houston or the Colts take the division, then the other one's going to be fighting for a wild card. So whatever teams are in the wild card hunt will be the ones affected by whether or not the Chargers win or not. But like I said, I don't think it's going to matter much at all. If they start off slow, they'll pick it up. But I don't think they're going to start off that slow without him because they have the depth behind him. They have the players that can keep that off going without Gordon. They've already proved it every time Gordon gets hurt. And it's Phillip Rivers' team. And until he's done, Gordon is just a sidekick. He's the Robin. I don't even know if you would call him a Robin right now. Keenan Allen's Robin. He's Batgirl. Melvin Gordon's Batgirl.
I stopped listening after Bill's in a wild card spot. I'm sure that you made some really good points, though. But I think if there's two things you can know about the Chargers, it's that they're going to be disappointing in September and disappointing in January. That's the way the Chargers have always been. It's probably the way they always will be, at least for the last 20-some-odd years. But let's go to a prop that's available for the 2019 season, available to any team in the league. Taylor just did an article on this. Which wide receiver will lead the NFL in receiving yards this season? Taylor, you made the case for Juju Smith-Schuster of the Steelers at a plus 1,000 payout. So before we get Rick's opinion on who his pick is, what led you to picking Smith-Schuster?
So he finished fourth in the league in receiving last year, I think, with Antonio Brown in that offense. Now Antonio Brown's gone. I imagine Juju will see a larger target share from Ben Roethlisberger. He still had 166 targets last season, which is up there, of course, but second most in the league, actually. But I just think you're getting good value, plus 1,000 on a guy that's shown last season it was kind of a breakout year. He's capable of putting up big numbers. Brown being gone should just open things up for him. I don't think he's going to get 200 targets, but I don't see any reason they won't force feed him like that. So Julio Jones is the favorite at plus 400. DeAndre Hopkins is plus 600. So you're getting Juju at significantly more favorable odds, I think, and there's no reason to believe he can't lead the league in receiving. The Steelers led the league in pass attempts last season. I don't know if that'll be the case again, but they've shown that they're clearly interested in throwing the ball. So I just think it's a solid value. I also like Stephon Diggs at plus 4,000 as a sleeper.
You know, when we first discussed you writing this topic, the first thing I said, or one of the first questions I said, other than teasing you about Hopkins, is I asked, what about Juju? Because I agree with you. Every point that you made about Juju is a valid point. But for the sake of our viewing audience, I'm going to pick someone else so we give them a little more balance here. And it has to be Julio Jones. Both you guys mentioned Matt Ryan as potentially leading the NFL in passing yards. Who's he going to throw the ball to? Julio Jones. Yes, Ridley will get some also. But what Ridley's going to do is make sure they're not double teaming Julio Jones, who is by far the best receiver in the NFL. Not only is he bigger than Juju and bigger than Brown, he can stretch the field. He can take it over the middle. He can win jump balls. He can throw it in the red zone. These are things that Juju, Brown, and other players, Hopkins can do it as well, but not a lot of these other receivers that are the quick, smaller receivers can do this kind of stuff. Julio can do it all. Block, catch, run every single route on the route tree. He's a dominant force. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the NFL. He just led the NFL in yardage last year, and he was up there. As long as he's healthy, he's always competing for most receptions, most touchdowns, most yards. I'm going with Julio. Me and Julio down by the schoolyard.
I think his odds are plus 400 or plus 600. He was the betting favorite to repeat. He won the yardage title last year by over 100 receiving yards. I mean, the interesting thing with Smith-Schuster, too, is Roethlisberger led the NFL in passing yards a year ago. So if Smith-Schuster just steps in and takes over some of those yards, he would be in a good spot. We did pick Matt Ryan to lead the NFL in passing yards, so Julio Jones is tough to go against. There's a reason his odds are as short as they are. Three names that I thought were interesting that we did not mention yet, and don't jump on me yet, Odell Beckham Jr. with the Browns. Not really interested at plus 1,000. I just think it's interesting that he has shorter odds than the next guy on my list, which is T.Y. Hilton of the Colts. If he's healthy, if Andrew Luck is healthy, plus 1,200, it's an interesting play. Andrew Luck is one of those guys that when we had our discussion a week ago about the best, the quarterback that would lead the league in passing yards, Luck was up in that discussion, which means Hilton would, in theory at least, be in contention. And the other one is the other quarterback who's always in discussion for yardage lead is Drew Brees. Michael Thomas is an interesting option. He's plus 1,000 also. I prefer him at plus 1,000 to a guy like OBJ, just because I think that the Browns are – you mentioned the Bills competing for a wild card spot. I think the Browns might should compete for a wild card spot with the additions they've brought in and Baker Mayfield's progression. But I'm not as on board the hype train as a lot of people who must be driving those odds down. Because if it was Beckham at plus 2,000, I'd be interested. Beckham at plus 1,000, I don't think that it's worth that kind of a flyer on it.
Not with Landry on that team. No way.
Right. And speaking of plus 2,000 odds, there's a guy who's interesting at that mark because we talked about the potential of a couple running backs holding out a moment ago. And Rick, you mentioned this player in that discussion. So Taylor, I want to get your thoughts. Could an extended Melvin Gordon absence with the Chargers improve the odds of Keenan Allen to lead the NFL in receiving yards? Because he's available at plus 2,000 odds, which, as I said, if that was what Beckham's odds were, I might consider just a little flyer in case the Browns actually, aren't the Browns. But a guy like him, he's a really good wide receiver already. He could be up there. And then if they don't have a running game to turn to, he'd have to be up there, would he not?
Yeah, he's a good value. I noted in the article, plus 2,000 just looks a little bit low. He's more of a possession type, though. He's not like a deep threat like Julio and Hopkins and some of these other guys, so it kind of limits his upside. His career high is 1,393 yards that 2 years ago. The volume's there, though. Like, if he's healthy, which is a big question mark with him, he should see upwards of 140 to 160 targets. So anytime you have that kind of volume, like I said, you're going to be in the running, and I think at plus 2,000, the odds make sense. The guy I actually said was my favorite after I screwed up the rankings in the article is T.Y. Hilton, like you said. He's the only guy to amass 1,200 yards last season with fewer than 80 catches. That kind of, efficiency speaks for itself. Luck has been fully healthy for a year now. Hilton's another injury concern himself, but if he's healthy, if Luck's healthy, there's no reason to believe he won't be up there again next season. And, slightly more favorable odds than Smith-Schuster at plus 1,200. I think that stands out quite a bit.
Time to talk hoops.
I'd like to say something real quick, Drew. I'd like to just hop in just real quick. I know you want to move on. Just real quick.
Go for it.
T.Y. Hilton's a great call as well, especially since he stretches the field and the Colts like to throw the ball. They don't necessarily always have a great, reliable running game. They've added some assistants back there to try and balance it out so Luck's not throwing the ball 50 times a game. As I mentioned, and when we discussed quarterbacks, I think Luck will be up there in terms of passing yards and NFL MVP candidate, and Hilton will benefit from that. The thing, though, with Keenan Allen is he's more of a possession receiver. He doesn't stretch the field as much. Mike Williams will stretch the field. He'll get the jump balls. If Benjamin's still there, I'm not sure if he is or isn't, he'll get stretch the field. Keenan Allen is a possession volume receiver. He gets like 100 catches. However, a lot of it's over the middle. That's why his yardage isn't up much. With that said, though, if they're going to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game, then his numbers should go up. Theoretically, you would think, as long as he's healthy. And he's had injury problems in the past as well. So Juju, Hilton, Julio, all great picks. I think they all offer value. And if bettors are looking at multiple options, those are great options to have.
Now it's time to talk some hoops. NBA fans everywhere are still buzzing over the recent Russell Westbrook trade, which will see him reunited with James Harden in Houston. Rick, does this make the Rockets a favorite in the Western Conference? And let's just, before we say that, a favorite after we eliminate the Sacramento Kings, because we know that you like the Sacramento Kings. So besides them, are the Houston Rockets a favorite in the West?
Once again, the championship's coming through California. It's not going through Houston. It's not going through Texas. Listen, it's great to see Harden and Westbrook team up again. They were a lot of fun together. The problem is this, though. They're both so ball dominant now. How are they going to balance each other out in the offense? I was reading there talking about Harden playing more off ball. I don't see that happening. This guy is so ball dominant himself, and his little not his three-point shots, his little run to the lane or pull fade back, fade away. Like, he's got all these moves with the ball in his hands. I can't recall him dominating a game off the ball when he was the main guy. And Westbrook, we know he's ball dominant. It's not like he's a good outside shooter. He takes it to the hole. He gets rebounds. He plays decent defense and stuff. I don't see this making them a favorite. I think this keeps them basically where they were at with Chris Paul, although I think Chris Paul was outside of the issues they had between him and Harden, I think Chris Paul was a better fit for what they were trying to accomplish, because at least he has a better either mid-range or outside shot than Westbrook. And I think that helps a lot when you have a guy like Harden. And it's not like Capella is going to be sitting out taking three-point shots or opening up the lane for them. So what are they going to do? They have three guys all trying to get to the lane or all within the key. How's that going to work for Houston? They'll figure it out to some degree, but they're not better than the Clippers. And if you have a fully healthy Golden State team heading into the playoffs, they're not better than Golden State. I'm not saying the Lakers, because I hate the Lakers and they're a two-man team. But, I also like Denver. I think Denver has more depth. And I like Utah. I think Utah has more depth. So you got other teams that are still, in my opinion, better than Houston, or at least as good as them. So this doesn't make them this doesn't make them any better than they've been over the last couple of years. If anything, some people argue it makes them a little bit worse. I don't think so. I think they're about the same.
I think it's fair to say they are a favorite. They shouldn't be the favorite. The Clippers should be the favorite, I think, just on the, if you're looking at the rosters, I think it's pretty clear they have the best roster, assuming it can gel the way they think it can. Plus 400 to win the conference, I think, is a little bit short for me. It's better than the either LA team, which is at plus 250 and plus 180 for the Clippers. So I wouldn't take those. But if you're arguing that even if they're the same team they were quality-wise, I think that could still be good enough to win the conference, considering Golden State is no longer a thing. And just them falling down means there's not that juggernaut. One of the LA teams may become that, but we don't know. There's enough uncertainty there to where I think you can take a flyer on a team like Houston or like Denver or Utah at more favorable odds, just because we don't know what the LA teams are going to look like. The Lakers could have injuries that could just not gel. Same thing with the Clippers. Houston's more of a known commodity, even if the fit between Harden and Westbrook is questionable, which I admit it certainly is. But I just think on talent, that team is as good as the other teams in the conference. So you're getting them at more favorable odds. They have experience in the playoffs the last few years. Westbrook's been there before, even if none of them have won the whole thing. I don't know. I just think there's good value there. I think there's enough continuity with the Rockets to where I think they should be at the top of the standings once the season comes to an end. And once they get into the playoffs, if they have home court advantage, there's no reason that they can't win the conference. So I wouldn't make them the favorite, but they should certainly be top 4, I think, at season's end.
I think top 4 is maybe number 4 is probably reasonable because, Taylor and I, we've done a couple of videos on this. Denver and Utah. Denver was the best home team in the NBA last year. They were nearly the best team in the West. Golden State's going to fall out of that top 4 spot. But Utah should be taking steps up. They were a really good team last year, but they should be even better this year, maybe an NBA championship contender. And then you've got the LA teams, much more likely the Clippers than the Lakers, just because even if it takes the Clippers a little longer or the same amount of time as the Lakers to adjust, the Clippers were a playoff team a year ago. The Lakers were not. So they're already starting from closer. Houston could be the 4th team. They could get a home series, 1. I don't know that I would call them the favorite, and I would struggle to call them a favorite when there are 2 to 3 teams that I like better than them. I don't know that you could, when only 8 teams make the playoffs from the Western Conference, that you could say that 4 teams are favorites to win the West. The one thing that would go to that is that it is very likely that the Western Conference is pretty open this year. With Golden State taking a tumble, even if they make the playoffs, if they're a 7 or an 8 seed and Thompson manages to come back, because he should be back in March, is the current projection. Steph and Clay in the postseason makes them a contender. At least if they can get through whatever their first-round matchup is going to be, because they're going to have a really difficult road for the first time in their run. But I think Houston is still Houston. I think that's pretty much the best assessment. If you thought going into this year that Houston was, if you bought into that, they might be the team to unseat Golden State, then Houston's a favorite. If you thought they've never proven themselves in the postseason, they're probably a 1 series win and done kind of team, then they're still that. I think they're basically in the same boat they were a year ago. The West has just shifted around them. We did, Taylor and I, a video where we went over the prop bets on win totals for this season. So we've discussed Houston. Their win total bet is currently set at 51.5 wins, over under. The Rockets went 53-29 last year. So the projection is that they would either be at least 2 games worse, or they could even be 1 game worse and they'd still hit the over. Any reason to think that they won't hit or surpass 52 wins this year, Rick?
That's actually a good mark. I think the smart play would say the under, because of what we just talked about. Other teams have gotten better. Houston, in my opinion, hasn't gotten better. If anything, they're about the same level of play. As you just said, they might be the 4th best team, when last year people were arguing that they were the 2nd best team, if not the best team. So if you're looking at it that way, then they've taken a step back in terms of the landscape of the West. I would say, if they get to 50 wins, that's a good mark for them, considering the makeup of their team. They might have continuity. They might have, some depth still there and stuff. But you have 2 superstars that are ball-dominant superstars. There's not enough ball to go around to make this team one of the best in the conference. I'm going to say 50-51 wins. I think they go under.
And since Taylor and I did a video where we included Houston, let's check out Oklahoma State. Their projected win total just 32.5, and this is a year after they only lost 33 games, going 49-33. Taylor, can the Thunder avoid losing 50 without Westbrook and without Paul George?
I think they can avoid it, just because there is still decent talent there. It's kind of a veteran team for a team that looks like it's on the verge of a rebuild. They're apparently struggling to trade Chris Paul, so it sounds like they're just going to have him next season. He was not very good last year, which is why I think the Rockets are better. But, if he can kind of turn back the clock a little bit now that he's on his own a little, without James Harden, there's still, Chris Paul, Gallinari, Steven Adams, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That's not a horrible starting point. I don't know where it gets you in the West. If they were an Eastern team, I would say that's a playoff team. But in the West, obviously, it's a different matter altogether. I think they can avoid 50 losses if things break right. If Paul's healthy, for example, which is a big if. I would be inclined to take the under on 32.5 wins, though. It's just there's so much uncertainty with them and just the quality of the conference as a whole. I think the safer play is to take the under, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went over 32.5.
I got so many things to say about this. I'll try and make it quick. Thunder will have over 50 losses. Okay, they're going to be a terrible team. If they were in the East, different story. In this conference, every team has gotten better except the Thunder. If you look from top to bottom, pretty much every team's gotten better, and Phoenix.
The Suns, yep.
And the Thunder will be the 2 worst teams in the West. Although if you look at 538's website, they say the Kings are going to have the worst record. Are you freaking kidding me?
538 has the Suns winning 36 games.
Exactly. They have them winning more games than the Kings. Oh, my God.
That's like double their win total.
I almost had a heart attack there. Kings will be fighting for the 8th spot because – what's that?
The Suns will win the West, and the Knicks are going to win the East. That's basically what they're saying. They're going to each go 72-10. They're going to break the Bulls' record. That's what that's basically the projections. That's
it's terrible. Okay, let me bring it back because I'm just going to go all over the place. The Thunder are going to have one of the worst records in the conference, which means I think the smart play, like Taylor just said, is they'll have under the win total. They'll have over 50 losses. They don't have a lot of talent to compete. We saw what happened with Phoenix last year. Even though they had some young pieces, some athletic pieces and stuff, they ended up being the worst team in the West. Dallas, who had some good young pieces, they still had a losing record. And the Lakers had on and on and on. There's teams that still had some talent that had losing records and were close to 50 losses. Oklahoma doesn't even have that amount of talent that these other teams have. There's no way they won't have more than 50 losses. Under.
Yeah, I'm taking the under also. I think Oklahoma State lost too many pieces. I think the rest of the West got too much better. I'm just trying to think offhand other than the Suns, who I think is going to be a worse team than Oklahoma City, especially if they do end up finding a trade partner. They're building up first-round picks. This is not a team that is trying to sneak into a playoff spot this year. This is a team that's going in 3 years from now, we're going to be good. But, yeah, they're
the amount of first-round picks they have, though, oh, my goodness.
Oh, Amazing decision
Exactly.
by the GM. Incredible work. This is one of those things that it's always hard when you're going through it, because I remember growing up in South Florida when the Florida Marlins traded everybody at the end of the 97 season. Every piece they got back in a trade was either on the team or traded for a piece that contributed to the 2003 World Series team. So they went from a 97 World Series champions to one of the worst teams in baseball. And the pieces that they got to trade everybody off, to sell everybody off, turned into another World Series title. And then Jeffrey Loria happened. We're not getting into that. We don't have time. That's a very different subject anyway. So we're going to leave it at, we're all saying Oklahoma City under 32.5 wins this season. Huge boxing match coming up this weekend. Manny Pacquiao fighting Keith Thurman in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thurman's WBC welterweight championship is on the line. Pacquiao only a slight favorite, coming in at minus 155 on the money line. Thurman, meanwhile, plus 125 betting underdog. Rick, money to be made on whichever side ends up winning this fight with those odds. Which side are you taking?
Well, I need to, put a disclaimer out there. Manny Pacquiao is tied with Marvin Hagler as my favorite boxer of all time. So I'm a big Pacquiao fan. I've been a Pacquiao fan for a long time. He's won me over with his willingness to fight pretty much anybody. And then his style in the ring, his fearlessness, his volume, his footwork, his in and out boxing. That's what's going to give Thurman a hard time here. Thurman's fought one time in the last 28 months. He's dealt with injuries and a car accident. And so it's not like he just took time off because he didn't feel like fighting or whatever. He had to come back from injuries and stuff. He'll have the power advantage. He'll have the size and the length advantage. But Pacquiao is Pacquiao. He's a legend of the sport. He's a living legend of the sport right now. People are calling him the Tom Brady of boxing right now. So I'm not a big fan of Tom Brady, but I can see the comparison there, okay? He's a champ. He's defying the odds. He's 40 years old. Thurman's 10 years younger than him. Pacquiao's winning this, baby. We're going to be celebrating. I wish I was there in Vegas for this fight. Drew, you'll be celebrating because Pacquiao's going to win. Pac-Man, his athleticism, his quickness is going to give Thurman some problems, okay? Thurman will have to catch him in close proximity to rock him. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to throw the volume that Pacquiao throws. That's one of the advantages Pacquiao has. The only time we saw Pacquiao not have that kind of advantage was against Mayweather, who just runs and ducks, and Juan Manuel Marquez, who's actually very comparable to Manny Pacquiao. Other than that, his sheer volume of punching puts him in a position to win fights on a regular basis, especially against someone who can't keep up with him in terms of volume and speed. Pac-Man all day.
Taylor, are you agreeing? Thurman's 10 years younger, 29-0, 22 knockout victories, 29 wins in his career, 0 losses, no decisions.
I'm taking Thurman. The one thing that gives me pause here is that he hasn't fought in 22 months, which is a huge layoff. But like you said, 10 years younger, he's undefeated. He has a size advantage, presumable strength advantage over Pacquiao. Pacquiao's old. He's had a great career and everything. He was the man there for a while. I just like the value you can get on Thurman, plus 125. The odds are pretty favorable. It's kind of a toss-up, so I would just take the better value, and that's Thurman.
Yeah. Champ with positive betting odds is kind of incredible for a fight like that. So I might gear that way, even if I think Pacquiao might be the more likely to finish. But you never or win. You never know when that longevity is going to end. Everybody thought Brady for 5 years running. So to use that comparison that Rick used, so he could be going until he's 50. Who knows? But at some point it would. Thurman trying to make it 30-0. He's the champ, and when you can get better than 1-to-1 payout on the champion in a fight, it's hard to go against it. And Rick, a question I've got for you too is about the length of this fight, because you've got minus 330 betting odds that it ends in a decision, plus 240 for a stoppage. 8 of Pacquiao's last 9 fights have ended in decision, and he's only won 2 fights by a stoppage in the last decade. So is this an open and shut case that's going to be a decision since you're picking Pacquiao to win?
I do think it's going to be a decision. And because what I was saying, his volume of punching, he's going to win points. Unless Thurman makes a huge mistake and leaves himself open to be blasted, which even Thurman himself said, he's going to make sure that that's not the case here in this fight. Thurman himself has had, I think it was 5 of his last 6 or 7 fights have gone the distance. He's only got 7 fights that have gone the distance, and most of them have happened in the last 3-4 years, if you include the layoff. So with that said, both of them are coming into this fight not knocking out their opponents on a consistent basis in recent years. That gives more credibility or credence to the fact that this should go to the distance. I believe Pacquiao is going to win. I believe he'll win by at least a majority decision, if not a unanimous decision. I believe he will outwork. If you go back to look into his fight earlier this year against Adrian Broner, he outworked him. That's what made everybody say, oh, my God, wait a minute. Pacquiao still got the speed. It doesn't even look like he slowed down at all, because he took a guy that was 11 years younger, a former champ, and just outboxed him for 11 of the 12 rounds. Now he comes against another guy who looked terrible in his fight in January, his first fight since March 2017. He looked terrible. He won by split decision. That doesn't sound like someone you want to put your confidence in, going up against a living legend of the sport. It's going the distance. Pacquiao's winning by decision. He'll outscore him just about every round unless he gets put down on the mat. Pacquiao's smart. He's back with Freddie Roach. Freddie Roach is a Hall of Fame trainer. They'll have a great game plan. As long as Pacquiao doesn't stick his chin out there to get knocked out, he's going to win this fight.
Yeah, it'll go the distance. I don't think you should bet on it at -330. There's just no point. But if you're going to bet on it, just bet on the fight itself, because it has better odds than whether it'll go the distance. Apparently, I can't say that phrase.
To follow up, I agree with what he's saying. There are prop bets where you can pick the method of victory. In my preview, Thurman was plus 185 to win by decision, and Pacquiao was plus 145 to win by decision. Those odds right there would be much better and offer more value than what we were just discussing, -330, plus 240.
Yeah, I definitely think it's safer if you're going to pick Pacquiao to bet him to win by decision, because he does not have that kind of knockout potential, really. I mean, like I said before, it was 3 fights ago he won by TKO, and before that it was November of 2009. So if you're going to go the other way, though, I would just you already get positive odds. So I would either take Thurman straight up on the money line, or I would take Pacquiao to win by decision. Let's go to MMA. UFC's on ESPN this weekend. 2 fights we want to get to. Begin with the main event of the evening. RDA, Rafael dos Anjos, listing at even money as he faces Leon Edwards. Edwards, the favorite, at -130. So, Taylor, which fighter wins Saturday's main event in San Antonio, Texas? Kind of similar here when you're looking at the ages, with Edwards being the younger up-and-comer and RDA being the more established veteran.
Yeah, Edwards is 7 years younger. He's less established. This will be his first fight in the U.S. His last 13 fights were in his native England. But he's been in good form. If RDA can take the fight to the ground, though, I think he has an advantage. Like you said, he's more seasoned, the more polished fighter. I like the plus money odds you can get on him, or I guess even money odds you can get on him compared to Edwards. It's just Edwards is not really a known commodity, and I'll take the one we know more about, and that's Dos Anjos. So once again, I'll just side with the better value and what seems like a toss-up overall.
This is a tough fight to pick. I mean, your argument makes a lot of sense. The problem is Edwards is probably the most overlooked fighter in the division right now. Dos Anjos, though, just beat Kevin Lee in his last fight, which Kevin Lee, most people thought was going to win that fight. And it was an exciting fight. Kevin Lee's younger, more athletic, yada, yada, yada. Same thing you can say about Edwards compared to Dos Anjos. Dos Anjos, like with Pacquiao, can win this fight with volume of punches. He throws more punches per fight than Edwards does. And he probably has at least the same amount of power as Edwards does. I think if Edwards can dictate the pace, that's a different story, because that's how he wins his fights. He controls the pace, and he controls where the fight goes, whether it stays up or goes down. They're both similar power, and maybe Dos Anjos has a little bit of edge there. If they go to the mat, it's closer to even than it's not. It's a hard fight to pick because both of them have paths to victory. I want to go with Dos Anjos, but I just feel like this is Edwards' time now. Like, he needs that fight Most people are saying he's been overlooked for too long. He's the best kept secret in the division. He's got so much talent. This is his time to shine. And I kind of am buying into that hype right now, which maybe will blow up in my face. But then again, I did pick Uriah Faber to win last week. And I did say in the main event there was potential for an upset. And I did pick Josh Emmett to upset as well. I'm going with Edwards. I talked myself into it.
All right. Well, we got 2 fights prior to that one. And before the co-main event, it's a matchup a lot of people have been waiting for quite some time, including one of the combatants. Juan Adams faces Greg Hardy. Both fighters available at -115. Rick, Adams has wanted to destroy Hardy for a long time, and finally he gets to step into the octagon with him. So the question is, will he?
I 100% despised Hardy. I didn't like him as a football player. I didn't like him with the stuff he pulled legally. We won't go into too much depth there. I despise the guy. Other than Floyd Mayweather, there's not many athletes I despise more than Hardy. I will be 150% rooting for Adams to win this fight, and I think he can win this fight. I think he's a more complete fighter than Hardy is. I think the one thing he has to look out for is Hardy has explosiveness, Hardy has some speed, and he has power. He's shown that in the other fights where he's taken out inferior quality opponents. And, he made a mistake. I'll give it to him. He made that mistake when he got disqualified in his last fight with the illegal knee. We're not talking about a seasoned fighter here, okay? And in the heat of the fight, and you're just focused on striking, and you might see an opening. Yeah, so he got it. And because he is who he is, he got a lot more crap because of it. But with that said, Adams has to be careful here because that explosiveness, that knockout power is legit. And if Adams isn't careful, he can get knocked out. But I can't stand Hardy. I'll be rooting against him. I will never bet on him. I will never bet for him. I hate even picking him when I did pick him in the past.
I was wondering if this was the Greg Hardy, and apparently it is.
It is.
What a weird life. Anyway, I guess I'll take him just because I've heard of him. So I think that's fine reasoning.
I think it'll be interesting to see what Greg Hardy does in his first lifetime fight against equal competition. He's been fighting for his entire life people who are just not on his level, who are either not on his physical level, not his size, not his gender, whatever it might be. So it'll be interesting to see what he can actually do against someone who can fight back equally. The competition he's had in his MMA career has not been even close to Juan Adams' ability level. And Hardy lost because he got DQ'd for an illegal knee, as Rick said. I'm with you, Rick, on it. I am kind of disgusted by Hardy. I would never bet money on him because it would just be filthy to win it. I think Adams is a very talented fighter. I think that I like you. I'm hoping he puts Hardy in his place. I'm hoping that we can end this and just never hear from him again unless he gets arrested. And that'll be it. So I would pick Juan Adams because I would never pick Greg Hardy. Some quick hits to wrap things up here on the podcast. 3 topics to touch on. We start with the proposed raid of Area 51 coming up on September 20th. Before we get to the obvious prop bet, we're going to begin with the most likely of them. Will President Donald Trump tweet about Area 51 by the end of September 2019? The yes bet pays at +260, the no at -340. You can also specifically bet about Trump tweeting a warning to not raid Area 51. That's +300 for yes, -500 for no. Taylor, do you see Trump discussing Area 51 in the next 2 months or so?
I have a good rule of thumb, which is bet yes on Donald Trump tweeting literally anything. He can't help himself. He's a craven individual that seeks attention nonstop and must dominate every news cycle. So if tweeting about Area 51 gets him in the news, I'm sure he'll do it. He's got to try and upstage everyone else. So yes, +300 will tweet about it. Yes, +300 will tweet a warning, I guess. So yeah, always bet yes on him tweeting stuff.
He has an epic tweet game. Whether you agree with him or not, he keeps things entertaining on Twitter. And he's trying to upstage me on Twitter. I'm trying to grow my Twitter handle, my Twitter account, and I got to compete with a guy like Trump. That's not fair right now, okay? with that said, you can't go against him tweeting about something like this. The second it blows up even more, becomes even more popular in the mainstream, or we get closer to the supposed raid date, and everybody's talking about it more, you have to imagine he will tweet something about it, whether it's in jest, whether it's making fun of somebody, whether he's comparing a political opponent or somebody he doesn't like, or South Korea, North Korea to Area 51. He's going to do something. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know if I would take the warning side of things because I think that that's a little too specific. But as far as him tweeting about it, absolutely, because either it'll be that, oh, it was fake news, or it'll be like, oh, I'll just show you Area 51. I'm going to make it all public or something. Because he said that, I think, during the campaign at one point, that he was going to declassify a bunch of stuff from Area 51. I think that only lasted like 3 days before he moved on to the next thing. It may not have played well. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I kind of like Taylor's logic on it. If there's a bet on will Trump tweet about blank, the answer is usually yes, especially if you can get positive odds. Next up, the bet with the longest odds of the three we're going to discuss on the Area 51 discussion. If there is a raid, will the Raiders find aliens at Area 51 on September 20th? I like that there has to be a date on this because it's not just, will they find aliens during the raid? It has to be on September 20th. The yes side pays out a plus 3,500. The no is at minus 6,000. Rick, do you believe?
Listen, as someone who's seen every episode of The X-Files twice and every movie twice, I do believe that there is alien life form. However, with that said, do you honestly think that if anybody even makes it close to Area 51, that they're going to get anywhere near anything that could be hidden or confidential or protected or secret or anything like that? No, more than anything, they'll get shot before they even get to that point. I wish it was true, but listen, I'm going to say this, though. For all you people out there with tinfoil hats and everything else you got going on, let me say this to you. If you think you're going to see alien life by raiding, then you might as well pick the yes, because at least you can make some money in the same process. That's my advice for betting. On to Taylor.
Yeah, if you're going to bet on this, you have to bet yes. I don't see the point in betting no at minus 6,000. Like, why would you ever do that? So if you're going to be crazy enough to bet on this, just shoot for the moon and say they find Martians in there or something like that. I mean, it's top secret for a reason. I imagine they're, maybe they got carcasses or something in there. Who knows?
Shoot for the moon in case they find Martians. Like, you were this close on making that like a perfect kind of like play. Yeah, shoot for the
shoot for Mars in case they find Mars.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, I'm not betting no. I'm not betting yes either. I would actually suggest the opposite. If you're one of those tinfoil hat, like you think that there's aliens, they're going to find them, which I agree with Rick. If this happens, which we'll get to in a second, and they actually get into the base, they're not going to get into it. It's not like they're going to be like, oh, they open the front door and it's like aliens on the wall. If there's anything there that is meant to not be seen by the public, it's going to be down so many corridors, down so many sets of stairs, and behind so many lock and keys. Will Smith in an action movie wouldn't be able to find it before he would be caught. So if you're going to go with it, don't take either of those bets. Just save your money and buy a bus ticket or something and join them if you're really going to bet yes. But final question, simplest, most obvious one. It's basically a yes or a no. Will Area 51 actually be raided on September 20th, 2019? The yes pays out a plus 300, the no at minus 500. And I would be curious to know how much you would have to bet on this at yes to make it financially worth conducting a one-man raid yourself. With all, I guess if you don't,
yeah, you're probably going to get killed. So I don't know. It's probably not worth it at all.
It's a life insurance policy.
Yeah, if you're going to raid Area 51, you're probably going to get gunned down. So I say the raid does not take place. That doesn't feel like a particularly hot take. So the raid's not going to happen.
I wish I could say the raid's not going to happen, but we have so many crazy people out there that you got to think at least a handful of wackos.
Well, what constitutes the raid happening? Like the people showing up, or the people getting in, or the people dragging aliens out, or what happened? Like,
if
you have to show up.
If you trespass on their property, you're technically raiding the property. I think that would be the line there.
Someone would have to clear a fence.
Yeah, someone would have to clear a fence or, get some distance on the property to be considered. Because let's face it, when we hear the word raid, we think they're going to invade a building or a structure. But there's so much distance between where the no trespassing fences and signs are to the actual structure itself. Like, they would literally need all 1.3 million people that said they're going to do it to show up and get to that building for everybody to get in before half of them are mowed down. And we know they're not going to mow down 500,000 people. However, if you have like 5 wackos, that might be a different story. And I would be remiss if I didn't say rest in peace, Art Bell, because he would love hearing this story if he was still alive these days. One of the greatest paranormal radio talk show hosts of all time. I learned so much stuff about UFOs, chupacabras, everything you can think of on his show. I wish he was still around to see this. Who knows? He might be leading the charge if he was still around. But yes, there's going to be a handful of wackos that do it. People protest everything. We live in an era now where everything's about getting attention. I might even do it now that I think about it.
I was actually just thinking, this sounds like you're talking yourself.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I might at least stand on the side of the road and try and sell some shirts or sell something out of the back of my truck, mixtapes. I got a mixtape. You never know.
You got a mixtape?
Who still has a tape deck?
Wackos going to Area 51.
And also apparently Rick. So I don't know if he's in that group or not, but if he doesn't show up for the first podcast after September 20th, then it appears that he will have shown up. Let's go on to the next topic and talk NASCAR. Taylor did an awesome job of predicting last week's race in Kentucky. This weekend, the race is in New Hampshire. Rick, who do you like for this weekend's Foxwoods Resort Casino 301?
Well, first of all, congratulations to Taylor's pick, because when he said it, I liked it. In my article, I said he's a top 5 driver and a sleeper pick to win, and I agreed with him. I did not think it would end the way it ended. That was a fantastic finish, him bumping his brother all the way to the line and then edging him out at the end. You got to love a finish like that. It was exciting. That's what NASCAR needs. 2 brothers racing each other clean, bumping and banging all the way to the finish line for at least the final lap. It was awesome. So with that said, though, I'm going to let my esteemed colleague go first to make his prediction because he's on fire.
Taking a less bold approach this week. I'm going to go with Kyle at 5-2. I think he bounces back this week. He's finished in the top 5 11 times, and he's finished in the top 10 15 times in 27 starts in New Hampshire. I think Logano and Truex are decent bets at their respective odds, but I'll play it safer this week and just go with Kyle Busch.
Yeah, Kyle's has to be considered by anybody betting on this race. He's one of 8 drivers, though, who have won this race before that are going to be active this weekend. That says a lot, because now you got people who have the experience there. Kyle is the favorite. He's the smart play. He's a safe play. I like Denny Hamlin. He's won multiple times here. He was plus 1,000 odds. I think he offers good value. Kurt Busch has won multiple times here at this track as well. He was, last I saw, plus 2,200. That's another great value right there. However, I don't remember the last time Kurt Busch has won 2 races in a row. That's the problem. For me, it's either Kyle Busch or Denny Hamlin to win at the Magic Mile. Truex has not won at this track yet. I love Truex. He's probably my favorite driver right now. I think Kyle's the best, but Truex is probably my favorite. Kyle Larson right behind him. But he hasn't won at the Magic Mile. So it's hard to say, hey, let's put our money on Truex. He's going to win this race. Harvick's won multiple times, but like we've talked every week, until he wins a race this season, you can't put your money on him. Denny Hamlin's won multiple races this year. He's on the same race team, Joe Gibbs Racing, as Truex and Kyle Busch. He's only finished outside the top 15 like twice at this track. He provides great value. Kurt Busch provides great value. Safe play, Kyle Busch, but I'm leaning towards Denny Hamlin this week. I'm tired of picking Kyle Busch every week.
Let's wrap things up with the Tour de France. Rick, we're at the halfway point of the race, according to you. That's what you told me to write down anyway. How are things looking, and who do you like to win the yellow jersey at the end?
This has been one of the most amazing Tour de France's in recent memory. In fact, first time in 25 years, we've had a different winner each of the first 11 stages. And if we get a different winner today, because we're recording at the time of stage 12, I haven't yet looked to see who won that stage yet. Heading into stage 12, though, Julian Alaphilippe has shocked the world with his just aggressiveness, his fearlessness, and holding the yellow jersey. He's a superstar in France now because of it, because he's a French rider. They're going crazy for him. They're hoping he can hold it for a long time. However, with that said, before the rest day, which was Tuesday, which if Lance Armstrong hates rest days, I hate rest days. With that said, the crosswinds on stage 10 blew apart the race. You had four favorites, at least four favorites, who lost time because they weren't up at the front before the crosswinds blew apart the peloton, the large group of riders. They all lost at least a minute and a half. What that did was put guys, the favorites, right up at the top. So Alaphilippe's winning, but he's winning because they haven't gotten to the hard mountain stages yet. He's winning because they haven't done the individual time trial, which is tomorrow, yet. And when they do that, Geraint Thomas, my pick to win it all, is one of the best, if not the best, time trialists that we have going on. He'll compete with Wout van Aert and probably Greg Van. I wouldn't even put him in there. Wout van Aert is probably the one guy that can beat Geraint Thomas. With that said, he's going to gain at least a minute or two on his competition, the other competitors. He might even gain a minute on his own teammate, who is the second favorite right now, right behind him. You got the two top favorites are teammates, co-leaders. It's the drama headed into it. It's still the drama halfway through it. It's going to be settled in the mountains. Bernal is an excellent climber, but Geraint Thomas, he won last year. He's a veteran. He's raced this 3 times as many times as Bernal has. This is only Bernal's second time. Bernal has a lot of talent. I've said in a video that we did, he's the future of cycling because he's got just an amazing skill set on the bike. Thomas is in second place. After the time trial tomorrow, he'll probably be in first place. Obviously, I haven't seen today's stage. For all I know, everybody crashed out, and they won't even have a tour for the rest of the 2 weeks that's still going on. I'm taking Geraint Thomas, sticking with that pick. I picked him before it started. He's looking great. He's got the legs. He's got the form. He's got the brain. GT.
Have you heard of Simon Yates, Rick?
Yes.
He won stage 12.
Thanks for ruining it for me.
I didn't know you had a DVR. You said you hadn't checked.
I DVR everything. I watched the whole thing. It's 4 to 5 hours long each day.
You watched the whole thing for 4 to 5 hours a day?
Yes. I love this. This is one of my favorite things every year.
I just made that name up, actually. He definitely didn't win stage 12.
I'm not surprised. They had a couple climbs. He's a good climber.
My apologies for ruining the stage for you.
That might be the best possible spot to end a podcast. Unless is there a TV show or something that you haven't watched yet that Taylor could ruin for you also? Stranger Things, right? You're up to date?
Taylor, did you finish watching Stranger Things?
I'm through 6 episodes.
Good. Let me tell you what happened to Stranger Things.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Odds On Favorites podcast. Make sure to check out gamblingsites.org for more from these guys right here. Check back next week for another edition of the podcast on the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel. They're Taylor Smith and Rick Rockwell. I'm Drew Goldfarb. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.